Patrick Mahomes has just won his third Super Bowl and third Super Bowl MVP just before the age of 29. He's already cemented himself as a future first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Some people already say he's the best quarterback of all time, and they might not be wrong. In this video, I'm going to compare Mahomes to a couple other first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks, past, present, and future, to see where he stacks up. This is just a quick little exercise I thought of, so I hope you enjoy it, or else. Starting off with Mahomes versus Brett Favre. Favre was seen as the Mahomes of the 90s in a way. For his wild gunslinging ways, Favre won 3 straight MVPs famously in the mid to late 90s. He also got a Super Bowl out of it and made back-to-back Super Bowls, but lost his second appearance in 1997, and although he played for another 13 seasons, never made it back to the big game. He also never won a Super Bowl MVP. Going into Super Bowl 32, Favre was just 60 minutes away from his second Super Bowl win and having a 10-3 playoff record, but he lost that game, and he finished with a mundane 13-11 playoff record. That means over his last 12 playoff games, he went 4-8, and there's a lot of blame to be pointed at him for those, as he was famous for his terrible crunch time interceptions, throwing 6 interceptions in a game, throwing 4 interceptions. First half of Favre's career was magical, and he was potentially on a GOAT trajectory, but Mike Holmgren left after 1998, and so did Favre's consistency. He had a couple great years mixed in, 2001, 2004, 2007, 2009, but he was never as consistently good after Holmgren as he was with Holmgren, and therefore the pretty easy choice is that Mahomes is the better quarterback. Up next, we got Mahomes versus Dan Marino. The big rap on Danny is that he never won a Super Bowl, and he made just one, as evidenced by his 8-10 career playoff record, 0-1 Super Bowl record. He obviously never won a Super Bowl MVP. He did win an MVP, and his 1984 season, in my opinion, is still better than anything Mahomes has ever done, and his numbers for his era were still incredible, even though he dropped off a bit starting in year 6. For as much as I love Marino and his highlight reel and all the tight window throws he made and how much fun he was to watch, there's really no contest here. Mahomes is better, Mahomes has won more, and he does just as many things with flair as Marino did. Although I would say Marino is still a better tight window thrower than Mahomes was. Mahomes versus John Elway. If you ask anybody over the age of 45, they absolutely fucking swear that John Elway is the greatest quarterback of all time. And unfortunately for those people, stats do exist and video does exist of John Elway's career. Elway's numbers are unbelievably pedestrian, especially compared to Patrick Mahomes. He won an MVP in 1987, although it's one of the weaker MVPs. Probably should have gone to either Jerry Rice or Joe Montana or Reggie White. He has a 14-7 playoff record. He did make 5 Super Bowls, which is one more than Mahomes, but as you all know, he got blown out in his first 3 before winning his last 2, largely on the back of Terrell Davis, but he did squeak out a Super Bowl MVP in his final career game. While Elway might be the only guy on this list with the talent physically to match up to Mahomes, the difference in stats, even adjusting for error, are just too much to ignore. Mahomes wins this one pretty comfortably. Sorry, Broncos fans. Up next, Mahomes versus Steve Young. Whereas Elway didn't have the stats and efficiency, Young didn't have the longevity, but tons of stats and efficiency. Young retired as the all-time passer rating leader, and even today, his raw stats hold up really well. He won 2 MVPs, had just an 8-6 playoff record though, and made just 1 Super Bowl. Now, in Young's defense, he did make it count as he threw a Super Bowl record 6 touchdown passes versus the Chargers to win Super Bowl MVP. But the 1990s 49ers, not the Cowboys, really should have been the dynasty. But Young had a very spotty and inconsistent playoff career outside of 94 as a starter, and it's pretty insane that for how loaded those 49ers teams were, they only made 1 Super Bowl in the decade of the 90s. And that's really, I think, where Mahomes runs away with it compared to Young. I think Mahomes on those 49ers teams we would have seen similar success to what we've seen with him thus far with the Chiefs, because Mike Holmgren came from the 49ers tree, and who was the offensive line coach under Mike Holmgren in Green Bay with Brett Favre? That's right, Andy Reid. And guess who coaches Patrick Mahomes? Andy Reid. It's all related. It's all tied together. Cue the meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But anyway, Young didn't play long enough and he didn't win enough, although his efficiency numbers are ridiculous. The argument goes to Mahomes. You want to talk about a guy who played a lot and put up monster individual counting stats with great efficiency, you get to Drew Brees. Unfortunately for Drew, he does have the individual numbers and the longevity to make Mahomes sweat, although he somehow never won an MVP in the regular season, which is basically just bad timing. Brees had a 9-9 playoff record, which is misleading. He was a better playoff quarterback than that. He did win the Super Bowl famously in 2009, and he did have the Super Bowl MVP, but his playoff success is already been dwarfed by Patrick Mahomes, and Brees, honestly, even despite his terrible defenses, he's had too many seasons where he missed the playoffs. He also was prone to more interceptions, but overall, Brees, I do think if you want to talk about a truly unlucky quarterback, he would be the guy. But still, even if you include the unlucky plays that have gone against him, I think Mahomes is a superior quarterback because he can do more. Now we get to Mahomes versus Aaron Rodgers. Now this one really tugs at my heartstrings because for so many years I was on the Rodgers GOAT train, and then Mahomes started to come along, and it's interesting because Rodgers actually has a better career passer rating and a comparable adjusted net yards per attempt and more MVPs than Mahomes does in the regular season. So regular season wise, you can still argue that Aaron Rodgers might actually be better than Mahomes all time. But again, it's those pesky little playoffs, much like with Rodgers' predecessor in Green Bay, Brett Favre, that really knock him down and prevent him from being any higher in GOAT conversation. It looked as though early in his career, Rodgers was going to have the career Mahomes is having, as he won his first and only Super Bowl appearance in 2010 when he was just 27 years old in his third year as a starter. He won Super Bowl MVP with some incredible throws, but as it stands, his playoff record is just a mediocre 11-10, and now Rodgers isn't to blame, of course, for all of those losses, but there were plenty of losses where he could have played better, and Mahomes has simply been a more consistent postseason quarterback, particularly in the clutch with a chance to win the game. I always said about Rodgers, he might not lose playoff games for you, but he won't win them. Mahomes will go out and win them for you. I think that's why I give Mahomes the edge. I think he's above Rodgers. Now we're getting into some deep territory. Mahomes versus Payton Manning. Payton Manning, you look at his career numbers, he has some of the greatest regular season numbers, and many could argue rightfully that he still, to this day, is the greatest regular season quarterback of all time. He still holds a record with 5 NFL MVPs, and his regular season career at this point is obviously better than Mahomes' regular season career. What Manning did from 2003 to 2013 when he won his 5 MVPs and made 7 first-team All-Pros might never be duplicated again. But again, playoffs do matter, and although Payton was not a terrible playoff quarterback, he really should have had a better postseason career than he did. He still made 4 Super Bowls, and he had a 2-2 Super Bowl record, but let's just be real here. The first Super Bowl he won in crappy weather against Rex Grossman, and he kind of got a default Super Bowl MVP. He never, in 15 postseason appearances, he never had a clean Super Bowl winning championship run. The closest he came was 2009, and that ended with him throwing a pick 6 to Tracy Porter. For as amazing and as scary efficient as Payton was in the regular season, especially in his prime, he just could not be counted on in the playoffs. And Mahomes already at this stage has numerous more playoff moments, bigger playoff moments than Payton has. I would say Payton's biggest playoff moment was the comeback versus the Patriots in the 06 conference championships. Mahomes already has like 3 or 4 moments like that are better, and he hasn't even turned 28. Simply put, if you wanted me to have a quarterback for the regular season only, I might go Payton, but absolutely without hesitation, I would go Mahomes in the playoffs, and that's why I say Patrick Mahomes is already better than Payton Manning all time. Now we get to Joe Montana. Montana is one of 2 quarterbacks who still, you could argue, has a better playoff resume than Mahomes does. Mahomes 15-3 playoff record, 3-1 Super Bowl record, and 3 Super Bowl MVPs. But Montana 16-7 playoff record, a perfect 4-0 Super Bowl record, and 3 Super Bowl MVPs of his own. And also Montana's statistics in those Super Bowls were off the charts great, much better than Mahomes has been. But this is kind of like the anti-Payton, anti-Rodgers narrative, where Mahomes in the regular season is really already nipping on Montana's heels. My issue with Montana is that for as amazing as he was in the Super Bowl and in the postseason, especially post-1987, he was not a very durable quarterback. He did not play a full season as starter after 1983, and he ended up retiring after 1994. He had a bunch of injuries, so Montana was not very durable, and I do think that lends another argument for Mahomes. I think if you're talking era adjusted, I think his regular season numbers are still the same in terms of what Mahomes' numbers are. Obviously, Mahomes' numbers are going to be better raw. Both Mahomes and Montana won 2 MVPs, but this is actually a legitimately tough one. But I feel like with Brady, I just feel like Montana, the sample size just isn't big enough, and by the time Mahomes is done, I'm projecting a little bit here, but I think by the time Mahomes is done playing, he will have easily surpassed Montana. And also, Montana was on some loaded teams, absolutely fucking loaded teams, elite defenses every year. Mahomes just had his first elite defense this season. I think Mahomes, when all said and done, is better than Montana, but I do think that on a per throw basis, Montana is very, very close. And finally, the one you've all been waiting for, Patrick Mahomes versus Tom Brady. This one's a little bit different because we all saw Mahomes and Brady face off against each other twice in the postseason, and on both occasions, Brady walked away as the victor, thanks to D Ford. They also overlapped a little bit. Brady's final 5 seasons coincided with Mahomes' first 5 seasons. Mahomes does have better raw numbers in the regular season, as you might expect. Brady does have 1 more MVP, 3 to Mahomes' 2, but there's no reason to think that if Mahomes plays another 12 to 15 years, he won't rack up a couple more to finish with more than Brady. What this all comes down to is projection. Mahomes, 15-3 playoff record. Brady, 35-13 playoff record. As we all know, Brady won 7 Super Bowls, and he made 10 Super Bowls. He won 5 Super Bowl MVPs. Mahomes still needs 4 more rings and 2 more Super Bowl MVPs, as well as 20 more playoff wins to get to where Brady was. Now, I will say that if Mahomes and Brady were to both somehow end up with 7 rings, we all know the discourse and talking point would be that, well, when they played head-to-head in the Super Bowl, Brady won, so that gives him the tiebreaker. So in a way, I do kind of feel like if Mahomes truly wants to be considered the outright GOAT by the time he's done playing, fair or not, I'm not saying it's fair, that he'll have to win 8 rings instead of 7. I think in a vacuum that Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback than Tom Brady. But at this point in time, I would have to say that Tom Brady is higher than Patrick Mahomes on the all-time quarterback list just because of the sheer volume of his accomplishments. But I do feel like as each year passes, Mahomes keeps climbing closer and closer. And through 6 seasons, he already blows Brady's first 6 seasons out of the water. So if you can see why Brady fans are getting nervous, there's a legit reason for it, because Mahomes is coming and he is legit. But as for right now, the answer is still going to Brady as the top quarterback all time. Do you understand, as somebody who pathologically hates Tom Brady and his fans, how fucking hard that is for me to say? You know what, on second thought, no. Mahomes is the GOAT, actually. Fuck Tom Brady. Mahomes is the GOAT. He's the best quarterback of all time. I'm making an audible right now. Mahomes, number 1. Fuck you, Brady.